Welcome to the WRC podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Marie, and you're in the right place. Here at the Well-Rounded Counselor podcast, what you can expect is to learn, shift your thinking, and gain personal and professional growth. And if you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another podcast episode. The conversation starts now. Hi, I am so thrilled that you are here for the very first ever WRC podcast. Oh my goodness, here we are, the first one. Well, I'm going to get into a few things today with you, and it's going to kind of set the tone of the podcast, why I started it, a little bit about me, and what you can expect from this podcast as we move through its journey and its evolution. And I want to start off asking you, have you ever asked yourself or said to yourself, I don't know what I don't know? Or have you ever said something along those lines? I know I've certainly said that to myself over and over and over again in various areas of my life. But with the Well-Rounded Counselor podcast, the WRC podcast, I want to specifically touch on various areas that might relate to students, to adults, to parents, to people wanting to get into the career of counseling, you name it, anything that has to do with being a well-rounded individual. And when I kind of got into this idea of having a podcast, it was literally an aha moment. It was a light bulb moment that I remember very clearly. I was driving in my car and I was listening to another person's podcast, and I had been listening to their podcast for such a long time. And along with that person and many others that I listened to, I just kept thinking, I want to have my own podcast. I feel like I have so much I want to share, and I have so many people I want to reach, and I just don't know what to name it. And I just had this aha moment. I'm going to name it the Well-Rounded Counselor because that's who I am. That's what I've been doing the last 15 years. And I've been evolving to become this well-rounded person. And this is what I preach to my students, to my families that I work with, to other counselors that I mentor. And to be honest, it's not one-dimensional. It's not this easy formula. It's very complex. And in this podcast, I want to break it down, and I want to talk about the variety of different areas of how to become well-rounded. So again, what can you expect from the WRC podcast? Like I said, I've gained so much knowledge when working with students, parents, and other counselors that I wanted to give back to those who don't know what they don't know. And I want to cover a variety of topics in different ways and cover it various days of the week. So before we get into the journey of me, I want you to ask yourself, what do I want to know, but I just don't know how to get there? Or I don't know what I don't know. Maybe there's an area of my life that I want to start figuring out or discovering. And let me take you on the journey of my own personal path and my upbringing and my schooling. I'm originally from a beach community in Southern California. I grew up in a single parent household. I was your average latchkey kind of kid, had to figure out things on her own. Didn't really have a mentor or an adult in my life that kind of showed me consistency. And going to college and figuring this college stuff out and figuring this life thing out was just kind of a hit or miss crapshoot. Let's just be honest. And I just kind of fell into everything that I now say has been my journey, and it's worked out for me for the best. Of course, along the way, I've stumbled, I've fallen, I've had to get up. And then there's just been those very gracious moments of grace where things just miraculously worked out in my life. And it's helped me evolve into the counselor and to the person I've ultimately become, and I'm still unfolding to become. And so when I was a young girl, I would say in my adolescent, teenage years, I loved to dance. I loved being creative. I wanted to be on the school dance team, a cheerleader. I loved the idea of creativity. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be other than that. And the role model that I had in my life was essentially my mother, who worked in a school, and she would work various part-time jobs just to make ends meet. And to be honest, that's all I knew. That was the model that I had seen since a very early age. And I decided, okay, well, I'm just going to go to college and figure it out from there. And I'm going to work 2, 3 part-time jobs, just like my mom. And I'm just going to, make ends meet and, stretch a dollar and just one day at a time. And yeah, I would try to plan for the future and I would create goals and aspirations, but I really didn't know what I wanted. It was all just kind of up in the air. And to be honest, I thought I wanted to become a dance choreographer, create music videos. And then, when I went to high school, I really didn't have a direction. And I remember sitting in my guidance counselor's office, and I still remember her. And I was with my mom and my stepfather at the time. And she kind of threw me in this random elective class that was called media arts. And I was like, what is this? What is this class that she's putting me in? And she's like, don't worry, you'll like it. So I went, and she was right. I did end up enjoying the class, and it ultimately set me on this trajectory of me wanting to pursue potentially film and something with producing and editing. And I knew that I got to be creative in that way, and it was very fun for me. However, I didn't have confidence. I didn't know how to even exude my confidence and advocate for myself and figure out how to even reach my goals. I just kind of existed. Does anybody ever feel like they just exist at times and they don't really have clear visions or goals? That was me in high school. I really didn't have a clear vision or goal. So anyways, I took this class and I thought I wanted to go to college and go into film. So I applied to less than 5 universities, again, all close to my house. Didn't really have a far radius of going too far from home at the time. Didn't have the confidence, was an only child. So I was like, I don't want to share a dorm room with anybody. And also I didn't have the money, so I needed to live at home. So I ultimately went to college, and I realized I don't want to compete for a major. I was like, this is not me. Film just felt too competitive when I got there. And I decided to change my major and go into broadcast journalism. Ironically enough, I was like, okay, I'm just going to pick something kind of closely aligned to this. Again, no mentor, nobody to ask me questions about what I'm good at or what I'm strong at or help me figure that out. I just kind of blindly went for it. And so I decided to major in broadcast journalism. And again, all those skills, those transferable skills, set me up for where I'm at today. I decided to take on some part-time jobs while I went to school. And ultimately, I remember just passing by, I don't even remember where I was on campus, but I saw an advertisement to become a college advisor aide. And it was a part-time job for students, whether you were an undergraduate student or a grad student. And you got the opportunity to work with low-income students who also didn't think they really had a chance of going to college. And so I applied for the job. I wasn't even going to go to the job interview. At the time, I had another job, and that boss decided to let me go. Actually, she pushed me and encouraged me to go to this job interview. And I was kind of like, I don't really want to go. But she encouraged me. I told her about it. She encouraged me. I went. I got the job. It was honestly the most life-changing experience because now it has set me on this trajectory of where I'm at today as a college counselor, a person who's a mentor, who helps people figure out their lives, who helps people see beyond their limits, who helps stretch their imaginations, build their confidence, eliminate fear, instill love and advocacy in their hearts and in their mind. That's what I do now. And if it wasn't for that push, for that one push of someone to say, just go to the interview, I wouldn't be having this podcast with you today, possibly. So I decided to go for this role. And I remember every single day, I loved waking up for work. I loved going into work. I loved working with students. And at this time, I was still an undergrad. I didn't even go for a master's. A master's was not even on my mind. That conversation never even existed in my household, getting a master's degree. So I ultimately had this job for 2 years. And in that time, I was getting lots of feedback from my students saying, Miss, you really should consider becoming a counselor. So I decided to apply, very little guidance. I went to some seminars, open houses, asked a few grad students what their experience was like. What do they learn? What's the difference between this program and that? And, I just went for it. And initially I didn't get in straight away. Funny enough, I was actually waitlisted. And I didn't think too much about it. I was a little disappointed, but I didn't think too much about it. And eventually they contacted me and said that they had some spots open off the wait list, and they invited me to join the cohort. Now, the program I did was a 3-year master's program in counseling. And I transformed in that program. Who I was at the beginning of that program, I came out so differently on the other side of those 3 years. And I didn't really understand what the program really entailed and how much work and commitment it was going to take. Nobody prepped me for this. I just kind of existed still, and I was just going through the motions. And I remember having a massive wake-up call with one of my professors and my classmates saying that they don't feel that I'm professional enough, that they don't see my commitment to the program, that I don't really contribute a lot, I lack experience. I mean, talk about ultimate rejection and feeling incompetent and somebody that didn't really have a good self-esteem in the first place, to just hit rock bottom. Okay. But going through this counseling program, I realized that it was the journey of me starting to heal so many wounds from my childhood. It helped me change and evolve my mind and learn how to help myself before I can help others. And ultimately, that's what a well-rounded counselor does. They need to become equipped. They need to become made to be built and ready to take on other people's challenges. And if you are not healing or working on yourself, how can you expect to go and help heal and change other people? So this journey in my grad program, which happened a long time ago, was the beginning of my healing process. It truly was. And I remember in my undergrad, we had to produce a news show, essentially. And I had to do a TV reporting segment on a topic of interest. And I chose study abroad, international students. I knew I loved traveling. I was exposed to traveling, thankfully, at a young age by doing student exchange programs. And I got the opportunity somehow, by the grace of God, to go study in Italy. And I got to do a little bit of traveling with my classmates. So this was something that I truly loved, was traveling, and I loved creativity, and I loved helping people, and I just wanted to somehow package it all together. And I truly did not know what that looked like. So this TV segment that I had to do in my undergrad program, I talked about study abroad and how to help others study abroad. And I just knew that every student had to get this experience. It was just invaluable. I became passionate about this topic of, why can't more people travel? Why do only so many Americans have a passport? Everybody needs to have a passport. Everyone needs to get out of their backyard and go see the world and open up their mind, open up their heart to other people. I mean, that was my classroom, was the world. And I just felt that it was so important to combine traveling and helping students go study abroad. And so when I had this college counseling gig as an undergrad student, and I was working with just the local student population near my college or university, I didn't see how I could connect the two at the time. And when I joined this grad program, I remember on the first day of grad school, they asked me, what functional area of counseling do you want to work in? And I said, study abroad. And let me tell you, the professor really kind of didn't support that. Everyone else wanted to go in different areas, such as like resident life, student life, financial aid, admissions, stuff that I felt was quite dry and boring. And I wanted to go into this exciting world of international education. And so I decided to never lose that dream. And I had one professor in my grad program who actually was a president of many colleges and universities in multiple locations, not just in the U.S., but outside of the U.S. And I just clung to him. I just was gravitated to him. And I just said, Dr. Vega, I want to learn from you. Like, what was that experience like? Like, how can I do that too? How can I leave everything I know and go somewhere else? That was the drive in me. And that was the first time I felt like I had this idea of a mentor to help support my goals and dreams, my career goals, let's say. So I would sit with him. I would learn from him. I would just ask him about what it was like. And he really didn't influence me on the idea of leaving the country to go and pursue my career. That was just something already built in me. I just knew I wanted something bigger, something not in my small town anymore. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to experience life. And I wanted to help students do that too. So, um, fast forward, I ended up getting a job in the Middle East. And 10 years later, I essentially built my career working with international students, expat students, their culture kids. I started working with their families. I started working with other counselors from literally all across the world, collaborating, learning, expanding ideas, and networking. And I just think to myself, wow, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. It was incredible to realize that there was this career out there that no major, no university could even offer you at the time, or at least that's what I thought. There was this world of international counseling, international education that was not exposed. It was not on my radar. People that I knew did not know about this. And when I found out about it, I was just mind blown. I was mind blown. And I remember um, maybe 3 years into my journey in the country that I was living in at the time, I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, my manifestation, my dreams, my career goals have just come to life. Like I look back and I used to visualize and dream about living in a big city and helping kids study abroad, go to the US, go to other countries. And I learned that and I'm doing that. It was just such a mind-blowing experience for me to have that epiphany of my dreams came true. And as I evolved, I began to present at conferences, both regional and international conferences on various topics. But one thing that I have continued to grow on is this topic of I don't know what I don't know. And learning and expanding and growing and developing into a better human so I can show up better for others. So that's a little bit about my personal path. That's a little bit about what I feel is important for you to know and why the well-rounded counselor has kind of evolved. And let me tell you, what is a well-rounded counselor? A well-rounded counselor is the whole person. This is something that we preach as counselors to our students, to our parents. And when I say to my students, I'm speaking about maybe the high school age group, so 14 to 18 years old. And this can also reflect, maybe a little bit younger or slightly little bit older. But that is the targeted age group that I typically work with and the parent age group demographic I work with. So we preach to our students becoming a holistic individual, a well-rounded individual. We want them to excel in their academics, understand what their career goals are by having, work experience or internship opportunities. We want them to develop their skill sets. We want them to, how to manage their well-being. We want them to have extracurricular activities. We want them to self-reflect. All of that is wonderful. All of that is so important when you're working with a student. But are we doing that ourselves as a counselor? But are we taking care of all those things first? And I remember being at work one day and just feeling burnt out. I remember just feeling so overwhelmed. I was getting inundated with so much information. And I remember taking time to scour the internet and to look at this concept of what is a well-rounded counselor. And there was literally nothing on the internet. And I spent a long time, hours looking and seeking, some sort of answer that would just demystify this idea of a well-rounded counselor. And I wasn't finding it. So I decided to dig deeper and I decided to reflect and I decided to, write down my thoughts of what I thought that was. And I decided to present this topic at a regional conference in Amman, Jordan, about 3-4 years ago. And it was a very self-reflective process that I don't think, people understood initially. And I presented it in a way that was reflecting the college application process. When a student applies to university, you have to show everything, academically how smart you are, your GPA, your grades, your personal statement, what's your story? Tell me a little bit about you. What's your testing like? You got to take the SAT, the ACT. Again, for us professionals, like, how are we bettering ourselves? Are we taking more master programs, or are we going for a PhD? Are we doing a certificate program somewhere? Like, how are we bettering ourselves? What does our test timeline look like? And financials. We ask our students and our parents to be mindful about financials, like how much can you actually afford? And that goes back to us as a counselor, whether you are in a team or whether you are that solo one-man band counselor all by yourself with no budget. We need a budget to help support our students. We need a budget to help grow ourselves professionally. And that's also super important in being a well-rounded counselor. And there are other skill sets that I'm going to touch on in this podcast, but that is just kind of the idea of what a comprehensive counselor can look like. So again, I wanted to begin this podcast by just sharing a little bit about who I am, why this concept of the well-rounded counselor is important, who it's going to serve, which is going to serve a lot of different types of people. Whether you're a young person, whether you are a parent, whether you are another counselor out there just looking for answers, looking for a network, whether you are an adult looking to go back to school or figure out the next steps in your life, this is for you, this podcast. So I encourage you to subscribe to this channel, to share with people that you know that feel can benefit from this information. And I also want to mention that I also am on YouTube. You can find me at The Well-Rounded Counselor, or you can find my Instagram page, which is at wellrounded_consulting. And you can also, if you're a student or you're a parent, or even just another counselor out there looking for resources, you can download my 10 free tips on a successful college application process. So I am so thankful that you had the opportunity to take out the last 15, 20 minutes to sit with me, to grow and be open to this new concept of the well-rounded counselor. Can't wait to get you all on the next episode. Did you love the episode? I hope you're feeling inspired and no longer feeling alone out there, and you're ready to evolve and become a better person. Make sure that you share this podcast or take a screenshot and post it on your social media. That's how you help spread this podcast organically, and people can find it much easier when you share, or share it with a loved one. I'm your host, Katrina Marie, and make it your mission to be a blessing in someone else's life today.